Hello everybody, Keith here again. Today I want to sort of do two things. The first is a quick update on how the plants I got from Zane Rapper recently are doing, because these are ones, for the most part, that I was a little bit unsure as to how to deal with, and I think the fact that they're not doing too badly may perhaps give some of you guys some hope that there are ways and means of doing things that are slightly out of the ordinary. I know it's very early days yet, it's not much over a week since I got them, but nevertheless we'll see how we get on. The other thing I want to have a look at is my Miltonia spectabilis. Typical Miltonia, it's all out the side of the pot, all the new growths are all over anywhere, and it really hasn't got anywhere to go in this pot. It's too far over one way anyway. Even if I repotted it in this, it wouldn't do it any, I don't think it'd do any good. I mean, I was going to wait until this flowering spike had finished, but it's aborted, so that's fine, that's going to go. So what I'm planning to do is to put it into a shallower but wider bowl, and hopefully I can help this to give it some room to grow, but keep a lot more of this going, because we've got pretty much at least one, and in a couple of cases, well, 3 cases, 2 new growths off the last lot of pseudo bulbs. So this is a plant which really wants to extend, because I mean, you've got 2 off this one, you've got 1 off that, you've got 1 off that, you've got 2 off this one, you've got 2 off that one. So that's a lot of growing points, and potentially that's going to give me something really special if I can get that to develop and to flower for me next time. That'll be really nice. If it flowers, at least one on each, one spike on each bulb will be well away. So, looking at Zane's plants, this is Phalaenopsis mannii. Doesn't appear to be a particularly big one. That's the leaf, probably 3 to 4 inches long, something like that. Nothing dramatic. I think this leaf has extended a little bit. That root definitely has. So it seems to be doing all right. We've got root tips on some of the other roots, so that's reasonably okay where it is. The other 3 were all plants that I was a little bit concerned about. I'd only got one other bulbophyllum, and that's a very different plant actually. The Bulbophyllum memoria Karen McDonald, which is this one, relatively thin leaves, and these, show you on this one, extended quite a long way. There's no signs of the 2 parts of that leaf starting to separate at all. It's not as if they're stuck, there's just no seam yet. So that obviously splits its leaves quite late on, and all 3 of the new growths are exactly the same. This is in a lot of ways a different beast. The leaves are really quite thick, which indicates this is from a different environment to the other one. It was bare rooted, knowing these things like to be moist. The middle of that one was in moss, and then I put it into a holy clay pot and surrounded it with bark. It loves that, absolutely loves that. It's doing really well for me, so I'm hoping that eventually this will do the same. And I don't think there's any doubt that this new growth here, the leaf, has pushed on. And this one is opening immediately. So there's quite a difference between one and the other. But the fact that it's doing something, that it's progressing, I think is good news. The Dendrobium jenkinsii, the flowers were lovely. They haven't lasted terribly well, but then again, they were in flower. They were there when it arrived, and they've been in transit. So I've had it for 7 or 8 days. It was in transit for 4 days, so they've probably been on here for at least 2 weeks. And we know from what Roger said for some of his others that some dendrobiums don't last very long. They are very odd looking pseudobulbs, little canes. Zane said not to worry, they always look like raisins. I was quite bothered. This was obviously off a mount. I can't do mounts, I just can't. The atmosphere in here is just not good enough. And I haven't got the tackle that Roger's got, and really it wouldn't be sensible to try and get the humidity right up as he does, because I've got furniture in here and I end up with everything going green. But what I did, if you have a look back to my repotting video, I put a lot of bark in the bottom to give it good drainage, and then put a layer of moss on the top, and then fastened this onto the moss. And the roots had found it. All the new roots are green, so this thing is drawing the moisture it needs. So that is good. And now we come to the last one. This is Talumnia hawksiana. It's tiny, absolutely minute. Originally I was just going to put the bare stem straight into the centre of this pot. Somebody advised me not to do that, to put it on something, so I cut this piece of branch, small branch, off one of the trees in the garden. It's actually a Leditsia, for that, whatever that matters. And I was a little bit worried, although Zane contacted me afterwards and said with hers, which is on a mount, well-established plant but very rambly, that just gets dunked for about 10 minutes every day. So I was a little bit surprised when I looked at it, because it's growing from 2 points. You've got a growth here, in fact you've got 2-ish growths there, but you've got another one at this end, and all the indications are that in nature it would be growing that way, but now we've got one going the other way, and that's got new roots on. That's absolutely fine. Now I really don't think I'm going to be able to show this very well. I'm doing my level best, but I don't think I'm going to. It's very hard to see right now, but I was very excited. Not that it takes a lot, if I'm being honest, but that end fan coming out from underneath it is a new growth. Don't think it's going to come out very well. But we've got a new growth. So I'm really pleased that those 3 awkward ones are at least doing something so far, and I haven't just curled the toes up and died. So that's that. Now I'll knock this little bit off, clear the plants away, and we'll have a look at at this Miltonia. Right, let's have a look at this then. These wanting to be damp, the compost is smelling a little mushroomy. Let me just ease that up so I'm not going quite so much off camera. So let's have a look and try and see what we've got in here. I think I've got it loose. I'm going to conform it. Well, I think that bark was definitely getting ready to change. It was watered several days ago now, and the bottom of it is very wet. So that's not ideal even for one of these, I think. But having said that, there's a lot of good roots on this, a lot of very good roots on this. You could, at a pinch, split that and it might go, but I think it's still a little bit short of splittable size. But I hope I'm not going to bother doing a lot with the roots. There's nothing I can really see that looks like a dead root in there. That looks remarkably healthy, does that? So I am going to just leave it, and as I say, leave that, and we'll see what we can do. Now this is typical Burns packaging in the bottom, but a lot of that's just going to go straight through anyway. Little bits of plastic to use as crocking. Really, the holes in this are a bit big. They are more than a bit big. Now, I am planning to use some new bark I've got from Spiceotic Plants. This is their medium Sumatran bark. And I think that looks quite reasonable. But that is going to go through the bottom, unfortunately, so I've got to go and have a look outside and see if I can find some broken clay pot to go in the bottom of here, because there's nothing here that is going to stay in the pot unless I can cover these drainage holes up. Right, so I'll clear that away, and I'm going to have to disappear and come back soon. Okay, I've got some old broken flower pot and put them in the bottom of there to protect the holes, and hopefully now I can get a layer of bark in there and it will go straight through the bottom of the pot. Right, I'm not going to film all the messing about doing this, but what's I think quite interesting is that in looking through all this lot, this is one of the two leads. That bulb still has some active roots. This one, which is not the latest bulb, that's over here, and that one's flowered, is still putting out new roots down here. Yes, this one's putting out new roots, it's that one there, and there's some up here coming off this one. But this is a plant that puts roots out very easily. Now what I'm going to do with this is put it so that the back of the plant, the part that's the oldest that it's all growing from, is going to be right at the back of that pot, and then everything else is going to flow away from it as best I can manage it. I don't know if it's going to be that easy, but I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm not going to bother with moss with this. I think with a lot of it, all I can really do is stick my little finger in and see what it's like a little bit further down. Besides, about half of this is not going to have roots in it for a little while yet. So I want to make sure that this bit doesn't stay waterlogged, or we're going to have to be repotting this in months, not a couple of years. Now we've got a flower spike that's gone brown, so it's undoubtedly died, so I'll take that off down at the bottom because we don't need that. It's all floppy anyway. So I'm now going to play about with potting this. I mean, I can show you the first little bit that I'm going to do, I suppose, but it's fairly standard stuff. It's just trying to make sure that I don't get too many air holes in the compost, try and get the roots. Now one thing I've got to try and do, and something I'm very definitely guilty of, is getting plants that are too high. I'm very bad at that. Usually end up with a plant sitting above the top of the pot, and that's definitely not a good way of doing it. But I think on the whole this isn't going to be desperately hard. Looking at it, the roots are quite good. They're accepting the bark quite happily, as far as I can see. So yeah, this is going to get extremely boring now, I think. So I'm just going to, I mean, I've got a new growth there, which is, and another one over there that's quite low down. That's going to make it difficult to deal with that. I don't know what to do, if I'm being absolutely honest. I think I'm going to have to try and rotate that a little bit to bring that towards the surface. But I think I'll do that, and I'll see how I get on, because I could be messing about for a little while yet. Okay, I'm not sure how well this has worked. It's a very, very unruly plant. Somebody told me once that all Miltonias are very rambly plants, and they'll go all over everywhere. I've put some stakes in to try and move some of these growths a little bit where I want them to go. There's some, like down here where they're resting on top of the gravel, and I am worried that they might end up rotting or something like that, but there's really very little I can do about that. It's just the way they've grown beforehand, so it's difficult. That some of the roots are a long way above the surface, but we've seen how far they can go down, so there's no reason to believe if I can keep this wet they won't go to it. And what I might do, I'm still debating it, is what I've done with some of the other plants, like the Jenkinsii, which we looked at earlier on, and put some wet moss right on the top layer, so it gives the roots some moisture to head towards. And if I can get it to do that, 9 times out of 10 they go down into the bark. Well, that's been quite a good technique, but I can't just put a layer all over everywhere or I will categorically lose these. I'm hoping that because they're up against bark now, they will turn and do something a bit different. So, okay, that's a very quick look at repotting Miltonia spectabilis. Have we got anything else that's worth having a look at? Well, pardon me for being a bit of a saddo, but this is my Psychopsis. It's bloomed once for me, which is wonderful. Now then, there we are. The bud on the end of that is progressing again, so that's good. We've got a big fat new growth down there. This, by the way, is simply a marker. It's not a plant name. I chose red ones. It says grow on one side and bloom on the other, so that I know which is the last fertiliser I apply, because this of course is growing and blooming at the same time. But the other thing that I'm pleased about, and I'm hoping you're going to be able to see it, but just behind that one, just at the back down there, is another new growth. Well, it could be another spike for all I know. To be honest, I hope it's not a new growth, because I don't know where the roots will go. But we have anyway got a my Psychopsis is doing okay. I'm really pleased to see that one doing its thing. Twinkles are going completely mad. This is the white twinkle, which has got a different number of new growths on it every time I look at it, but it's somewhere between 10 and 12. It's actually quite difficult. I keep spotting more and more as we go, so that, if anything like all of those bloom next time, I shall be happy. This is the red one, which has never been quite as active, but what I'm extremely pleased to see now is that, yeah, we've got a new growth there, but there's a new growth down there, there's a new growth just there, We've got another new growth there, that's 4. And one over here as well, so that's 5 on there, which is a big improvement on last year when it did 3. So overall, I'm extremely pleased with what we're doing. So thank you for watching. I hope it's been of some kind of interest, and I look forward to seeing you sometime soon. Bye.